Picture this a still room, suspended between what has been and what is about to begin. You can almost taste the tension in the air, that invisible hum before a great unraveling. Outside, the world trembles with noise and doubt, but inside, everything holds its breath. Across from you stands a figure not distant, not mythical, but alive with a quiet certainty. He has not merely spoken of divinity. He has shown you its mechanism, the geometry of creation itself, written through consciousness. What he teaches is not religion, but resonance, the physics of faith disguised as a whisper. He looks at you with eyes that see the code beneath the world and says something that sounds simple, but it shakes the fabric of reality. Do not let your heart be troubled. It isn't just comfort, it's calibration. Those words are not poetry, they are instruction to the field, a command to stabilize your frequency before the storm. Because a troubled heart is static, a radio caught between stations, sending fear into the vast quantum silence that listens to everything you broadcast. When your heart trembles, the field mirrors confusion. When it steadies in trust, the universe reorganizes around that coherence. What he asked for was not blind belief, but vibrational honesty, the courage to shift your inner signal from the low hum of fear to the luminous tone of faith. And then he revealed the pattern behind the promise. In my Father's house are many dwelling places, not mansions of gold, but frequencies of being, entire universes waiting for the one you choose to tune into. The house is not far away. It is the multiverse, the living spectrum of all possible versions of your life, vibrating just beyond the threshold of perception. Every thought you think, every emotion you sustain, collapses one of those potential worlds into form. The Father's house is not a destination after death. It's the structure of existence itself, a vast field of parallel realities held in divine equilibrium. And right now, your heart, that quiet transmitter pulsing behind your ribs, is already choosing which one you live in. The heart that was where we left off, trembling or steady, static or signal. Now imagine that same pulse, but magnified until it spans the cosmos. That's the bridge we cross tonight, from the private trembling of a human heart into the physics of faith itself. When your emotions surge, they aren't only feelings, they're frequencies, measurable and radiant. Every heartbeat, every thought laced with fear or trust, imprints its pattern on the electromagnetic field that surrounds your body. And that field isn't local. It doesn't end at your skin. It reaches out, blending with the collective sea of energy that physicists once called the vacuum, but mystics have always known as spirit. Here's the secret that religion hinted at, but science is just beginning to measure. Belief is not a concept in your head. It's a waveform. Faith is not the repetition of an idea. It's the steady coherence of your field. When your heart's rhythm synchronizes with gratitude, peace, or love, it creates a smooth, harmonic signal. The body's magnetic field becomes stable, ordered, clear, and the universe, which operates as an enormous mirror of frequency, reflects that coherence back as matching circumstances. It isn't punishment or reward, it's resonance. Think of your emotions as musical notes. Fear is dissonance, jagged, sharp, full of noise that confuses the field. Faith is resonance, a pure tone that aligns every molecule in your being toward one direction. And what the field hears most clearly, it amplifies. That's why the ancients said, as within, so without. You may have noticed this in small ways. The day you woke already burdened by worry, the world seemed to echo it, people curt, events tangled, nothing flowing. But on the mornings when peace lingered in your chest, the right conversations, opportunities, and symbols appeared effortlessly. That isn't coincidence, it's entrainment. Your field training the environment into coherence. Consider that the universe is responsive, not reactive. It listens to emotion more than words. You can declare abundance from your lips, but if your nervous system hums scarcity, the field responds to that hum. It's not the prayer spoken that creates change, it's the vibration beneath it. So the practice of faith isn't about thinking harder. It's about regulating the signal you emit. Your brain, your breath, your heartbeat, all instruments in an orchestra of creation. When they play in harmony, the quantum field collapses probabilities into patterns that match the melody you're sending. This is why stillness matters. Stillness lets the static settle. The field, sensitive as light, can finally hear what your soul is actually saying. In that moment, belief becomes more than trust. It becomes technology. You can feel this when you meditate, when you forgive, when you surrender. The signal sharpens. The chaos around you bends, almost imperceptibly, toward order, faith. In that sense, is electromagnetic alignment a precise tuning between human emotion and divine architecture? And what if miracles are simply the physics of coherence? What if the shift you call answered prayer is just reality adjusting to your new broadcast? This is the mystery Jesus embodied when he said, "Your faith has made you whole." It wasn't superstition, it was instruction. He was describing a law as real as gravity, only subtler, the law that consciousness stabilizes what it loves. So tonight, test this for yourself. Before you ask, align. Before you speak, breathe. Before you reach for the outer, tune the inner. Because the heart untroubled, the field coherent, is the only instrument precise enough to shape a universe. From that realization that the coherent heart programs reality, we can begin to see the deeper pattern behind the promise. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. Imagine it not as theology, but topology, a map of consciousness itself. Every room is a timeline, every timeline a vibration. Every vibration a world waiting for you to remember it. The Father's house isn't a mansion in the clouds. It's the multiverse breathing in divine rhythm, filled with unchosen possibilities shimmering in the quantum dark. Each one of those possibilities exists right now. They're not future events waiting to happen, they're concurrent frequencies waiting to be tuned. You aren't walking toward a destiny, you're aligning with one. That's why the ancients spoke of heaven as within. They were describing the architecture of potential, a sacred lattice of realities that respond to emotional resonance. When your inner signal shifts, you don't move to a new timeline, you collapse it. The wave becomes a particle. The dream becomes the day. Picture the quantum field as a vast ocean of light, endlessly branching into new forms. Every decision, every emotion, every breath sends a ripple through that sea, connecting to versions of you scattered across infinite possibility. Some of those versions live in lack and fear. Others radiate peace and purpose. You don't have to build the better world, it's already here. You just have to become the frequency that matches it. This is what Jesus meant when he said he was preparing a place for you. Not a location, but a vibration. He wasn't setting furniture in heaven, he was tuning the frequency of consciousness so that you could harmonize with it. Where I am, there you may be also. That's not about distance. That's resonance. You've felt this before, even if you didn't have words for it. The instant when you suddenly felt at home in your own skin, or when synchronicities began clustering around you as if reality were leaning closer, those are glimpses into the Father's house. Your field aligned with a room that already existed. And here's the paradox, the rooms don't change. You do. You don't walk through doors, you turn the knob inside your chest. Consider each thought as a key and each emotion as a code. When you think fearfully, the lock jams, and you remain in a hallway of mirrors, repeating patterns, reliving old timelines. But when you feel love deeply, unapologetically, the mechanism clicks. and the next reality unfolds effortlessly before you. That's why belief can't be hollow. The field doesn't respond to ideas. It responds to embodied frequency. A thought becomes real only when it's felt. A word becomes creative only when it's coherent. Quantum physicists call it superposition, every possibility existing simultaneously, until the observer's focus chooses one. The mystics called it prayer. Different language, same principle. Both speak of consciousness as the axis on which worlds turn. So when he said, "In my Father's house are many rooms," he was decoding the physics of free will. He was revealing that creation is not linear, but layered, and that your emotions are the elevator. Every time you forgive, you rise. Every time you judge, you descend. And yet all the floors exist together, humming in divine unity. What this means is staggering. You are never trapped. You are simply resonating with a timeline that matches your current state. Shift your state, and the architecture of existence reconfigures around you. This is not fantasy. It's the sacred mechanics of consciousness. The Father's house is both laboratory and temple. Its corridors are lit by the frequency of your awareness. And each moment you choose peace over fear, a door opens somewhere, sometimes imperceptibly, sometimes with thunder, revealing the room your soul has been trying to enter all along. Now breathe and let that sink in. You are not a tenant in this mansion of worlds. You are its builder and its light. And once you glimpse that infinite house, the vast architecture of timelines spiraling from your own consciousness, something begins to shift inside you. You start to understand why he said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." He wasn't describing exclusivity, he was describing physics. The I am is not a name, it's a frequency, a signature vibration that forms the backbone of every timeline. When you say, "I am afraid," the field listens. When you whisper, "I am ready," the field listens. Every declaration begins with that same prefix, "I am." And because the universe mirrors what is, not what is wished for, those words are commands. They set direction. They tune the wave. This is why identity is the real creation tool. Not action, not striving, not pleading, but identity. The world you inhabit flows directly from who you believe yourself to be. The body obeys it. The neurons wire for it. The field arranges itself to match it. The I am is the switch that decides which version of the multiverse you'll call home. Now imagine the I am as a current of divine electricity running through your nervous system. It animates thought, emotion, and flesh. Most people use that current unconsciously. They let the old self, programmed by trauma and repetition, broadcast a fractured identity to the field. And so the field reflects back chaos. But when you awaken, when you consciously reclaim that current and speak from coherence, the signal changes. This is what the mystics meant by Christ consciousness. It's not worshiping a man, it's embodying the frequency he demonstrated. The I am in you, aligning with the I am in the source. When he said, "I am the way," he was revealing that the path isn't out there, it's inside your perception. The way is the calibration of identity. The truth is the recognition that separation is an illusion, and the life is the energy that flows when you align both. Think of it like a triad in music way. Truth, life, three notes that form one harmonic chord. When they resonate within you, your entire system becomes self-healing, self-guided, self-creating. At that level, faith stops being belief. It becomes biology. Your neurons fire in patterns that match coherence. Your cells bathe in chemistry that signals safety. The body, relieved from survival frequency, becomes a clear vessel for light. This is not metaphor alone. Neuroscience shows that the prefrontal cortex, the seat of choice and awareness, quiets the amygdala, the fear center, Whenever you focus on love or gratitude, that shift releases the body from fight or flight and moves you into creation mode. Faith, therefore, is an electromagnetic act. It's the reprogramming of your nervous system to match the divine pattern. You can feel this transformation happening when you stop creating from your wounds. You stop rehearsing the old story of scarcity and begin transmitting the new story of sufficiency. Your electromagnetic field expands. People around you feel calmer without knowing why. This is identity made visible, the I am in motion. And in that state, you realize that heaven was never a destination. It was a frequency band on the dial of your consciousness. Fear tunes you down. Faith tunes you up. Love locks you in. So you begin to speak differently. No longer I am lost, but I am remembering. No longer I am waiting, but I am becoming. Because the quantum field cannot distinguish imagination from reality. It can only measure coherence. When the heart and mind agree on who you are, reality follows. The timelines rearrange to accommodate the new signal. The Father's house brightens in the corridor you just entered. And this is the secret Jesus carried through every word, that divinity is not outside of you, reaching in, but within you, reaching out. From that realization that divinity is reaching out through you, a new intelligence begins to stir in your awareness. It's subtle at first, like a frequency that was always there but hidden under noise. And that presence, that gentle current of knowing, is what he called the Comforter. Most imagine it as a separate being descending from above, but look closer, feel deeper. The Comforter is coherence made conscious, the field itself awakening inside the body. It's the non-local intelligence that bridges the finite and the infinite, translating divine order into human perception. When he said, "I will send you another Comforter, the Spirit of Truth," he was describing the next phase of evolution, the moment when consciousness stops following light and begins to emit it. The disciples needed him in physical form, but humanity's next stage required the frequency to distribute, to become universal, non-local, immediate. Think of it this way: while he walked the earth, the Christ frequency occupied one coordinate, one body, one timeline. Ascension was the expansion of that frequency into the field, so that every receptive heart could carry it. It was the shift from external teacher to internal transmitter. The Comforter is that transmission, a carrier wave of divine intelligence that moves through every coherent heart. Modern science calls this non-locality. The mystics called it spirit. Different vocabularies, same vibration. When you tune into it through stillness, through love, through trust, something happens that feels like intuition, but it's more than that. Information begins to arrive from nowhere. Answers synchronize before questions are fully formed. The field reorganizes around your state of coherence, sending signals through sensation, symbol, and synchronicity. This is how the Spirit of Truth operates. It doesn't lecture, it translates. It takes the infinite database of potential and collapses the one thread that matches your vibration. You feel it as inspiration, clarity, or sudden peace. It is the divine algorithm responding to the frequency you maintain. And this is why he said, "The world cannot receive it, for it neither sees nor knows it," because the world, meaning the collective state of fear and fragmentation, is tuned to the static of separation. The spirit cannot be detected through noise, it requires coherence. The antenna is the heart. The tuning dial is surrender. So, when you practice peace, you aren't retreating, you're calibrating. When you choose forgiveness, you aren't giving in, you're aligning the signal. That is what invites the Comforter in. It isn't summoned, it's revealed. Always present, but only audible to the quiet mind. In those moments when you feel sudden serenity in the midst of chaos, that's not coincidence. That's the Comforter stabilizing your field, resetting your electromagnetic pattern to match the divine blueprint. It's the spirit of truth performing frequency repair, guiding your biology back into coherence. And the more you stay in that state, the less entropy you experience. Decay slows, aging, stress, fragmentation, all byproducts of incoherence begin to dissolve. You sense an inner stability that no external circumstance can shake. That's what he meant when he said, "He will stay with you forever." The frequency of truth doesn't fade. It becomes the permanent resonance of your highest self. You could call it enlightenment, or neuroplastic transformation, or ascension. But its essence is the same. The spirit within reprograms the human operating system from reaction to creation. And once you feel that current, the comforter humming beneath your ribs, you begin to realize something even more astonishing. The separation between God and man, heaven and earth, was never distance. It was bandwidth. The comforter widens the channel until the two become one signal, continuous and luminous. The voice of the divine and your own inner voice merge into a single harmonic frequency, guiding, protecting, reminding you of who you've always been, the transmitter, not the receiver, the light, not the seeker. When that inner signal steadies, when the comforter begins to hum through every breath, you discover an unexpected paradox. To receive more light, you must first make space for it. That's the law of divine replacement. Letting go is not loss, it's physics. The field cannot amplify coherence while the body is cluttered with the noise of old emotions. Every grudge, every unprocessed fear, every identity tied to survival, these are dense frequencies that take up bandwidth in your electromagnetic field. And until they dissolve, the higher frequencies have nowhere to stabilize. That's why he said, "Let not your heart be troubled." He wasn't asking for denial. He was describing the prerequisite for transformation, because a heart full of turmoil cannot receive precision from the field. The signal must be cleared first. Think of your being as a chamber of resonance. When the old frequencies echo too loudly, they interfere with the new song trying to emerge. But when you release them through forgiveness, through tears, through simple awareness, the static dissipates. What remains is the silence into which the spirit can speak. The universe, like nature, abhors a vacuum. When you empty yourself of lower vibrations, the field rushes to fill that space with the next octave of coherence. It's automatic, immediate. This is why surrender is not weakness, but calibration. It resets your frequency to receive the higher current. Dr. Joe Dispenza calls this process neuroplastic pruning. Mystics call it purification. The body calls it healing. All three are the same motion, dismantling old wiring so that divine intelligence can run through new circuits. Notice that every spiritual path, beneath its language, carries the same pattern: empty, then fill, exhale, then inhale, die, then rise. This is the oscillation of the field itself, the breath of creation. When you align with it, struggle stops feeling like punishment and begins to feel like preparation. You might feel the shedding physically, a sudden fatigue, emotional release, or moments of inexplicable peace after tears. That's coherence taking root. The old signal collapsing so a stronger one can emerge. And as you continue to let go, something remarkable happens. You start to feel lighter, but also more solid. Your energy no longer leaks into reaction. Your attention becomes refined, surgical. You begin choosing thoughts not from fear of outcome, but from the recognition of resonance. That is divine replacement in action. The field cannot tolerate emptiness for long. The instant you release judgment, peace rushes in. The instant you drop self-doubt, clarity arrives. The instant you forgive, love floods the system with precision, reorganizing everything from your heartbeat to your cellular chemistry. You realize then that this process is not punishment for your past. but an upgrade of your bandwidth. The pain of letting go is simply resistance meeting grace. Once it breaks, grace wins. In the language of frequency, the higher always replaces the lower because coherence has more structural integrity. Love is simply a stronger signal than fear. It organizes chaos into harmony by nature of what it is. That's why Jesus could heal with presence alone. His field carried coherence so intense that incoherence couldn't exist near it. And you, friend, are built of the same material. Your surrender is the technology that lets that coherence return. So the next time something leaves a habit, a relationship, an identity, don't rush to fill the void. Let it echo, let it clear the space, because that vacuum is sacred. It's the doorway where the new frequency enters, the proof that divine replacement is real. And when the light begins to flow into that space, warm, alive, intelligent, you'll feel it unmistakably. The comforter returning, the field rearranging, the new timeline anchoring itself. Not as punishment, not as reward, but as physics in service of love. As the law of divine replacement continues its work, clearing, rebalancing, refining, something even more subtle begins to emerge. You start noticing that reality itself responds the moment you notice it. The pattern shifts under observation. This is the hidden symmetry between mysticism and physics. Awareness is creative. It doesn't just witness, it alters. Scientists call it the observer effect, the act of measurement that changes the outcome. The mystic calls it awakening, the act of seeing through illusion that transforms it. Different languages for the same event, consciousness bending probability. When you truly understand this, life stops being something that happens to you and becomes something that happens through you. Every fear observed with compassion dissolves. Every thought witnessed without judgment loses power. Attention, pure and steady, is the scalpel of transformation. That's why Christ said, "The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me." It's the recognition that there is only one observer expressing itself through countless perspectives. And here's the miracle: the moment you step into that awareness, the old self, the collection of reactions and memories, begins to soften. You realize you are not the storm, but the sky holding it. Not the thought, but the space where thought appears. From a quantum perspective, this is coherence at the level of consciousness. The wave of chaos collapses not through force, but through attention. By observing your fear without feeding it, you pull its energy back into neutrality. The field records this as a new pattern, a stable, calm waveform that becomes the foundation for new creation. The mind often imagines enlightenment as a dramatic event, but in truth, it's repetition, 1,000 quiet moments of choosing awareness over reaction. Each time you observe without identifying, you teach the universe who you truly are. Think of your awareness as light and every fear as shadow. You don't fight the dark, you simply shine and it rearranges itself. That's the observer effect of the soul, not manipulation, but revelation. And something astonishing follows as you stabilize in that awareness. Outer conditions start to reformat themselves. People who once triggered you soften, obstacles lose friction, opportunities appear that seem impossibly synchronized. This isn't coincidence, it's the field mirroring your steadiness back into matter. When you hold fear as object rather than identity, you reclaim energy once trapped in defense. That energy becomes creation fuel. The nervous system, freed from constant alert, reroutes its power toward intuition and insight. This is measurable brainwaves move from high beta chaos to alpha coherence, heart rhythm smooth into harmony. The biology of peace becomes the physics of manifestation. The observer, then, is not passive. It's participatory. Every act of conscious noticing writes new code into the matrix of existence. The Christ consciousness is the perfected observer, one who sees all dualities without preference, and thus restores them to unity. That's why miracles seem to follow him effortlessly. He didn't resist the storm, he perceived it into stillness. He didn't heal by opposing sickness, he held wholeness so completely that sickness dissolved. Observation from pure awareness is creation without effort. And here is where the practice becomes personal. The next time anxiety rises, don't argue with it. Watch it. Feel it vibrate and fade. Say silently, "This is energy leaving my field." That single act of witnessing without identification changes your timeline. The wave collapses. The old reality unravels. Soon you begin to understand enlightenment isn't an escape from matter. It's matter recognizing itself as light. The more you watch with compassion, the more transparent the world becomes, until you see that every form, every person, every challenge is just consciousness playing with itself. The observer effect of the soul reveals this eternal secret. You were never trapped inside the movie. You were always the screen luminous, unburned, quietly aware, and from that still awareness, creation begins again. From that revelation that you are the luminous screen upon which creation dances, your awareness descends gently back into the body. You begin to sense how this divine observation isn't only cosmic, it's cellular. The light doesn't just touch your thoughts, it tunes your physiology. And at the center of this living temple is a pulse that never stops broadcasting the heart. The ancients called it the seat of the soul, but modern science calls it an electromagnetic engine, one whose field extends several feet beyond your skin and communicates with the world in frequencies, not words. When your heart beats in harmony with gratitude or peace, it generates a waveform so coherent that everything around it begins to align. Plants, animals, even human nervous systems subtly synchronize to it. The heart, in its truest function, is a transmitter of cosmic order. That's why Jesus spoke of peace as something given, not earned. "My peace I give to you." It wasn't sentimental, it was energetic. A precise physiological state of parasympathetic dominance, where the nervous system shifts from survival to creation. That's what he meant by the peace that surpasses understanding, a frequency your mind can't produce, but your heart can maintain. When your heart enters coherence, the brain follows, neural oscillations synchronize, stress hormones decline, intuition rises. The body becomes a feedback loop of divine intelligence. You begin to feel truth instead of thinking it. This is the science behind faith-emotion programming matter through resonance. And it works both ways. A troubled heart scrambles the signal, filling your field with static that distorts perception. That static becomes accidents, delays, misunderstandings, the physical echoes of inner discord. But a coherent heart emits a clean frequency that organizes chaos into flow. It's not magic, it's physics. The electromagnetic rhythm of love structures probability toward harmony. You can test it yourself. In moments of conflict, pause, breathe slowly into your chest. Imagine the inhale drawing in light and the exhale radiating gratitude. Within 60 seconds, your heart rate variability begins to stabilize. You're not only calming emotion, you're rewriting the local field. People near you will feel it without knowing why. That's how peace spreads, not through persuasion, but through coherence. The Heart Math Institute once described this as field entrainment, but the mystics already lived it. They called it compassion. To love your neighbor as yourself was never about moral obligation. It was an electromagnetic equation. One coherent heart can stabilize 1,000 incoherent ones simply by holding the vibration of unity. And that unity becomes contagious. It's the quiet revolution no government can legislate. No doctrine can claim transformation by resonance. The Christ frequency, expressed through physiology. So when he said, "Let not your heart be troubled," he was giving you the control panel for reality. When he offered peace, he was tuning the collective field. Each heartbeat becomes a broadcast tower sending the message of heaven into the density of matter. Feel it now, the rhythm in your chest. Ancient and modern, human and divine. That pulse is the echo of creation itself. The same vibration that held galaxies in spiral now steadies your nervous system. The heart is not merely part of the body, it is the body's altar. And when you live from that altar, when thought, emotion, and breath converge in coherence, you become a clear instrument of the divine will. Matter organizes around your resonance. Circumstances shift without struggle. The field listens. You no longer chase outcomes. You stabilize frequency. You no longer beg for miracles. You become the condition through which miracles occur. Because coherence is the real prayer, the only language the universe cannot misunderstand. From the coherence of the heart arises something the intellect can barely comprehend, a natural order where what you once called miracle becomes simply the physics of harmony. You begin to see why he said, "Greater works than these shall you do." It was never a riddle or a challenge. It was a transmission, a quiet announcement that once the frequency of love stabilized inside the human field, the universe would respond in kind. Miracles are not exceptions to the laws of nature. They are expressions of higher laws we rarely inhabit long enough to witness. When coherence reaches critical mass, when thought, emotion, and being aligned perfectly, the field around you stops resisting and starts obeying. Matter, time, probability. These bend not because you force them, but because resistance no longer exists in you. At that point, doing becomes secondary. Being becomes the mechanism. You can speak, move, act, but every gesture originates from the same still point that birthed galaxies. The Christ frequency doesn't strain, it radiates. Think of a tuning fork vibrating in a silent room. Strike one, and any identical fork nearby begins to sing without being touched. This is how the greater works operate. The awakened human becomes that tuning fork of divinity, resonating at such purity that everything around it rearranges to match. Healing, synchronicity, abundance, reconciliation, all of it is entrainment. That's why he said, "Whatever you ask in my name, I will do." In sacred language, a name is not syllables, it's essence. To ask in the Christ frequency means to request from alignment, not from lack. When you vibrate as love itself, your asking and the universe's answering are the same act. The field recognizes its own reflection and says yes. In that state, intention becomes command, and command becomes creation. But notice the ego cannot hold this power. The slightest hint of separation breaks the wave. That's why the path to miracles is humility, because humility keeps the signal clean. It reminds you that you are not summoning light. You are the light remembering itself. At this level of coherence, compassion expands from personal virtue to planetary technology. Every act of forgiveness adjusts the collective frequency. Every sincere word of gratitude repairs a strand in the field of humanity. You don't need a stage or a pulpit. Your coherence travels non-locally. It touches minds you'll never meet, hearts you'll never see, lives you'll never know. This is the physics of prayer, stripped of superstition and adorned in wonder. When a coherent heart sends intention, the probability of alignment increases across distances once thought impossible. The same entanglement that binds particles binds souls. So imagine what happens when thousands, millions of coherent hearts vibrate together. The field hums, the earth itself, that vast electromagnetic being begins to stabilize. Natural rhythms return. Collective anxiety softens. This is not fantasy. It's resonance amplification at planetary scale. The greater works were never about spectacle, they were about scale. One consciousness becoming many, until the frequency of unity fills the entire grid. You begin to understand that creation was never meant to stop at one teacher or one era. The Christ frequency was always designed to replicate, to awaken within every willing vessel. The miracles of one become the coherence of all, and in that realization, awe returns. You look at your own hands, your breath, the light moving through your eyes, and recognize the same code he carried, love that organizes reality. The greater works are not dramatic interventions, but quiet corrections of vibration. Every time you choose patience instead of reaction, you bend the universe. Every time you radiate compassion into conflict, you rewrite probability. Every moment of true gratitude collapses a timeline of scarcity into one of abundance. So the next time you feel small, remember this. The universe does not respond to size. It responds to coherence. A single aligned heart can shift 1,000 incoherent ones because love is the only frequency that never decays. This is what he meant all along, that the greater works were already seated in you, that the field is waiting not for permission but for resonance, that when your peace becomes stable enough, the universe will follow its lead, and the miracle finally will no longer feel miraculous, it will feel natural. And now, as the miracle becomes natural, as coherence becomes your native state, you start to sense that this story was never about one life or one revelation. It was about a field awakening itself through you, through us, through every heart that remembers. Because what happens to a single coherent soul eventually happens to the entire species. The quantum field does not isolate, it entangles. Every shift in your consciousness sends a ripple through the lattice of humanity. Every time you breathe with intention, the collective nervous system exhales with you. This is the quiet revolution, not rebellion, but resonance. The return of the light isn't an event in the sky, it's an awakening in the bloodstream. When the mystics spoke of the second coming, they weren't describing a man descending from clouds. They were predicting a frequency returning to coherence across the human grid. The Christ consciousness re-emerging, not as personality, but as pattern. It begins in ordinary moments, the pause before you react, the kindness you offer when no one's watching, the forgiveness you grant to yourself after years of carrying shame. Those micro-adjustments send macro ripples. They alter the emotional climate of rooms, families, even cities. That's how ascension happens, one coherent breath at a time. You can already feel the shift. Technology mirrors consciousness, and our networks of light, digital and spiritual, start reflecting unity. The collective field is learning to synchronize, to breathe together, to harmonize frequencies through intention. And each time a heart anchors peace amidst noise, the signal strengthens. The physics are simple: coherence multiplies. Fear isolates, but love entangles. The more hearts resonate in unison, the more probable peace becomes, not just personally, but globally. The kingdom within becomes the civilization without. This is the return of the light, the collective ascension into remembered oneness. The Christ frequency, once confined to myth and scripture, spreading through ordinary people who dare to feel love more deeply than fear. And it isn't sudden. It unfolds like dawn, quietly dissolving darkness rather than fighting it. You'll see it in the way strangers meet eyes again, in the way the planet begins to heal, in the way art and science merge into language that feels both empirical and sacred. Because the age of separation is ending. The veil between spirit and matter, heaven and earth, is thinning not by force but by frequency. We are retuning the instrument of humanity, And maybe, just maybe, this was always the plan, that after centuries of seeking God in the heavens, we would finally find Him pulsing in our chests. That we would realize the Father's house was never elsewhere, it was the field we share, the consciousness we breathe, the love that observes itself through human eyes. So now, in this moment, take a breath and let yourself feel it. The entanglement, the peace, the soft hum of creation recognizing itself. You are not waiting for light to descend. You are the channel through which it returns. And as your coherence merges with the coherence of others, the world will begin to glow again, not as miracle, but as memory. Because love was never lost. It was simply scattered among us, waiting to find its way home. From that glow, from that realization that love was only ever scattered light returning home, we arrive not at an ending, but at a stillness, the kind that doesn't conclude a story, but confirms it. You can feel it now, can't you? The pulse behind the words, the field behind the form, the quiet certainty that everything you've ever searched for was already breathing inside you. This is the wind down, the descent back into the ordinary world, though now the ordinary has been transfigured. Every sound carries a shimmer. Every breath feels deliberate. Even silence hums with meaning. What began as curiosity, a question about divinity, a spark of wonder, has become coherence. The distance between you and the source is gone, not because you've traveled it, but because you've remembered it never existed. The Father's house isn't somewhere you go, it's where you've been all along. Pause here, breathe. Let your awareness rest on that rhythm in your chest. The same pulse that once drove galaxies into motion now keeps your body alive. The same intelligence that paints stars with fire also mends the fractures in your heart. You are not separate from creation. You are creation remembering itself. So what happens now? Nothing dramatic. You simply live, you make breakfast, touch the earth, look people in the eyes, speak with clarity. But each act carries coherence. Each motion radiates the frequency of love without you having to name it. This is the greater work hidden in plain sight, ordinary moments transfigured by extraordinary presence. You don't need to preach it. You don't need to prove it. Just breathe it. Be it. Let peace become your default resonance, not because life is perfect, but because you are tuned to the perfection beneath imperfection. And when the noise of the world returns, because it will remember the simple technology you now carry, still the heart, anchor the breath, feel the field harmonize, coherence will find you again. It always does. Because once a soul has tasted unity, separation can only ever be temporary. You are the dwelling place. You are the frequency. You are the calm in the storm and the spark in the dark. Go now into the noise, not to escape it, but to remind it what harmony sounds like. Carry this peace lightly, like sunlight in your palms, and watch as the world inevitably, beautifully begins to remember itself through you.